Welcome back. Now, a day after the army chief took the government to the Supreme Court in the row over his age, the government has decided to fight him and stand firm. The Prime Minister today held consultations with his senior ministers, and today the centre moved the Supreme Court with a caveat that it be heard before any order is passed. The government is keenly watching to see what the court would do. Sources have told NDTV that they are keen that the case gets dismissed from the court itself. Now, earlier today, I spoke to former Defence Minister Jaswant Singh, who had some scathing words for the Ministry of Defence. Well, as that unprecedented row plays out between the Chief of Army Staff and the government over his date of birth, joining us on NDTV today is the former Defence Minister of India, Mr. Jaswant Singh, who's also had a career in the army as an officer. Mr. Singh, thank you for speaking to us today. As the Army Chief, takes this matter to court, it's an unprecedented situation, sir. In your view, do you think he should have gone to court?
No, I think you placed the question wrong. Do you think the government ought to have conducted the entire responsibility that it bears in this rather haphazard manner? That is the question we need to be addressing ourselves to. The chief as a citizen is entitled to all the rights and, of course, the obligations and duties that a citizenship entails. But I cannot possibly forgive the government for treating the situation in such a casual and in a totally unforgivable manner. This is a tantamount to blunting the sword arm of the country. You can't treat the Chief of Army Staff in a manner in which he is compelled ultimately to seek recourse to a court of law. And it really demonstrates the kind of...
Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but, the army chief of the country is actually not just an ordinary citizen. He is the army chief. And therefore, given the sensitivities of his post, do you think he should have taken it as far as going to the Supreme Court? And I take your point on how the government has handled it. I'll come to that later. But on the army chief himself, given the sensitivity of his position, should there have been a better way for him to have also dealt with this?
I think he's tried all the possible better ways, because after all, what is he attempting to correct? He's not asking. I think that's where the great error in judgment, or most of the discussion that I've had occasion to read, lies. He's not seeking a change of his date of birth. What he is seeking is a rectification of mistakes in the records of the government. He is not seeking this for the sake of greater service, of longer service. He's seeking, that is what he says. I go by what he's saying. It's a matter of honor and pride for the office. After all, if the chief ought not to have, as you ever, to have gone to the Supreme Court, could the defense minister or the prime minister not have requested the chief or walked up to the chief's office and said, look, let's sort it out. What is the problem? It's an elementary matter of sorting out government records. But you can't continuously...
Sure,
Sorry, go ahead.
There's also a problem in that, General V.K. Singh also accepted in writing that he would accept 1950 as his date of birth when he was promoted some years ago. Now that is now being cited as the government as proof that he accepted their version. That also puts him in a bit of a spot.
No, it is being cited, I realize, and it's a very trite and I find rather shabby manner of treating the situation, because that assurance was sought from the general by a previous chief on the ground that if you do not do this, the promotions of other officers are likely to be thwarted. Now, you could find fault for him to have accepted it because he sought an assurance at that occasion from the chief who asked him to do it, will you please immediately rectify after? And then chief said, yes, I'll rectify, and then went back on it. So we are seeing something which is extremely distasteful. I'm revolted by the entire episode. You can't treat the army in this casual fashion, and that is really the point I have. There is such a disconnect today in the country between the civil and the military that because the military stands up and says, please correct this wrong, therefore the entire civil community of the government, particularly the bureaucracy, stands up and says, no, this is wrong, this is mutinous behavior. We can't have a chief asking for rectification of record, and when that is not done, no, for him to go to a court is wrong.
NDTV's cricket app, Android and iPhone. Fastest scorecard, special analysis, and much more. Download free. ndtv.com/apps.